1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dagger, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Keatron Evans. He is the managing partner at CyberSecurity, a global information security consulting business which includes penetration testing, incident response management and consulting, digital forensics, and training. Keatron is also a senior security advisor at Savvius and a top-rated instructor for ISACA and ISACA. He is also one of the authors of Chained Exploits, Advancing Hacking Attacks from Start to Finish, a textbook still used by the U.S. government security agencies. Keatron, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
When I'm sitting there looking at my IT structure and let's say I'm not a developer, I'm a step removed. Is there symptoms I should be looking out for that should be somewhat obvious that I'm being compromised?
Well, you know what? It used to be a lot easier to do that because systems used to be a lot more simple. We did simple things and we only did a few things with our computers. Now we do everything with them. Browsers are smarter. The applications that you use are smarter. And what that leads to is there's more bells and whistles. There's more moving parts. So now it's harder to see that weird thing happening because there's always weird things happening with the increased functionality of what we do with computers. So what's happening now is the attackers are evolving as well because one big part of hacking and penetration testing is something called evasion and covering your tracks. And it's an entire art form around not setting off bells and whistles and not making it to where people can know that you're doing what you're doing. And in the classes that I teach, we spend an entire half a day just on teaching the students how to do that part. Okay, now you know how to break in. Let's look at how to break in without ever being noticed. So we're doing it in classes for good guys. You can imagine the bad guys are really on the ball with that part of the attack vectors as well.
Yeah. Should it be an external person to my company? I mean, this is really protected information. I mean, this is kind of scary to me to share that. Or should someone be trained internally, or should you just sort of have a mixture with a quarterly review of some type or something?
So, yeah, you kind of need to have both. So basically, having an internal person is ideal. But the problem is most organizations that aren't over a certain size or generate enough revenue, they really can't justify the cost of having an internal person whose full-time job it is to do that. I mean, once these people go out and get these certifications and they actually have the technical chops to do these security audits and to do these penetration tests, you know, they're pretty high salaries. So if you're a regular mom and pop shop with 10 employees, you likely can't even afford to have a person full-time doing that. So what happens is you're kind of forced by virtue to actually have to have someone external to come in and do it once a year and pay them for that one-time engagement versus trying to pay a salary. Now, on the other side of that, we talked about regulations. If you're a bigger organization and you're regulated, then not only are you required to have it done once a year, but you're required to have it done by an external third party. It's almost like even if you have internal pen testers, you still are required to have an external one done. It's almost like you don't let a CPA audit their own books. You know, you have an external public CPA firm do it to maintain integrity and things like that. Because if you're the organization and I hire you and your job is to secure this organization, it's not likely that you're going to rate yourself and say, you know what, I suck at this and I didn't do a good job of securing the organization when audit time comes around, which is why they kind of regulate that you have a third party do it. And not only that, they regulate that every few years you rotate to a new third party. You don't use the same third party over and over again because suddenly if you do that too much, that third party becomes part of the organization. It's an extension, kind of like the Arthur Andersen in-run thing that happened all the way back in 2001 where basically Arthur Andersen was no longer being non-biased. They were kind of part of Arthur Andersen. The relationships had developed so much. So yeah, you have to have it done externally if you're big enough to be under any type of regulation. And it's a good idea to have it externally done if you're small, just because trying to pay the salary of someone doing it internally is really not feasible. And if you take a small company of like 50 people, they might only have one or two IT guys anyway. So trying to give them the additional hat of now auditing and checking security, that's not feasible because you have someone that's already stretched in, and now you're adding a whole nother big responsibility on. So you're going to end up with not a good job.
Well, it makes sense, too, because of the fact it's hard to see your own mistakes a lot of times, right?
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Are there key things? I mean, should my developer be behind it as a subcontractor for him? How much should, a CEO or a CTO or someone be part of all that? Maybe what are a few of the questions, okay, that I should use to hire intelligently?
Yeah, well, the main thing is, look for a resume. Now we live in a world of Google. We Google people first and then we talk to them. So we find out. So if it's a organization or a person that's coming to you to offer service, you should be able to find information about them pretty readily on the internet as far as whether or not they've done good business and that type of thing. And also it helps if you ask for previous pen test reports. For example, if you're looking to have a penetration test done, say, hey, I'd like to see a couple of sanitized penetration test reports that you've done for other organizations. And they should be able to provide that. That shows some of the maturity because, that's just one of the things that people in the industry ask for. They want to not only know that you're technical and you're good at hacking, but they want to know, are you able to deliver me a report that's going to allow me to make sound investment decisions and sound security decisions based on what that report says? Because some of the best technical people out there have a really hard time relaying that information in a written form that people that aren't technical can understand. And I've been fortunate to have that, I guess you could say, gift, because that's one of the areas that I get a lot of traction and excel in business-wise is being able to sit in the trenches and do the attacks and demonstrate the attacks, but explain what's going on to someone that may not be technical at the same time so that, when they look at ROI and what they need to invest in, they have a clear picture. We call it enabling the decision makers to make the right security decisions.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank you very much. What's the best way for someone to contact you? Is it through your website?
They can reach me on the website, or they can also just reach me at kevans@kmcybersecurity.com.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Keatron. I find it field very fascinating. This podcast will be available on the Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 website. So I want to thank all the listeners for listening.
All right. Thank you, Joe.